All right, today I'd like to talk a little bit about what love has to do with low entropy, or why being a low entropy consciousness has to do with becoming love. How is it that entropy and love get connected somehow? Okay, well, you know that in this virtual reality paradigm that I talk about, the larger consciousness system is the fundamental system. And we are avatars. We are played by a player that is a consciousness. I call that a individuated unit of consciousness. And that our virtual reality is here as a learning lab. You know about that. And that it's computed by a computer that's also part of the larger consciousness system. That the larger consciousness system is a information system. Okay, even a digital information system. Now, digital information systems want or need or exist because they have information. And when an information system evolves, it means evolving toward more, better, more useful information. It's the increase in information is how an information system evolves. If it loses information, a decrease in information, then it is de-evolving. Okay, now let's talk about entropy for a moment. Entropy is a measure of disorder. So think of an information system and how that applies to disorder. Well, information is order. If you have bits and the bits are all random, then there is no information. There's no information in randomness. That's almost the basic definition of randomness. No information in randomness. So if all the bits are random, you really don't have an information system. You maybe have a potential for an information system, but there's no information there. Okay, now, as those bits become ordered and that order has meaning, that order can be symbolic, that order could be just patterns. Any order contains information. For example, here's a very simple order. Up, down, up, down, up. What's next? Well, down would be next. Why? Because there's a pattern. We could predict what would happen next based on the pattern. That's information. There's information contained in the pattern. Okay, the pattern is lower entropy than if all those bits in the pattern were random. So you see, as bits are ordered, we create information, and those ordered bits can become symbols, like a 0 and a 1, you see, which could then produce lots of zeros and ones, which then can do everything a computer can do, just from those kinds of binary bits. So this is the nature of an information system, that it evolves to lower entropy, more order. It de-evolves to higher entropy. So an information system that is conscious, such as the larger consciousness system, then has two choices. It can evolve and grow and become more, creating more information, or it can de-evolve, have less information, less significance, and eventually, if that continues, die, end up with no information at all. So if you were a conscious, aware information system, what would you be doing? You would be trying to lower your entropy. Now, one of the things that consciousness was able to do to create more opportunities to lower entropy was that it broke itself into pieces so that it could interact with free will with those pieces. So all the pieces could interact, and the system could interact as well with all the pieces. Now, this created a lot of new possibilities. Possibilities of interaction with other free will units. Who knows what they're going to do, right? They have free will. How they might interact, how they may connect with each other, what they might do is unknown. That creates a lot more potential for growth, a bigger potential for order, you see? So this is a strategy to help the system evolve by lowering its entropy, give it more opportunity, more places that it can organize, more degrees of freedom with which it can organize. Okay, now of course in biology we did the same thing. You see, things become more survivable as they become more flexible, and they become more flexible as they become more complex. So when those single-celled critters became multi-celled critters, they lowered their entropy. They were now more complex as multi-celled things, more order, more structure, you see. So actually, evolution in biology is also based on entropy. The lower the entropy, and entropy, of course, is defined within a system. The lower the entropy, the more you evolve. The more complexity you have, the more capability you have, the more flexibility you have, the more you can do, the more you can understand, the more choices, the more degrees of freedom you have. So the larger consciousness system did this, and it created all of these individuated units of consciousness, all with free will, that interacted with each other. What they created was a social system. A social system is a bunch of free-willed units of consciousness that interact with each other. Now, in this interaction, there were ways that this interaction could take place that lowered entropy, and ways that could take place to raise entropy. There were two different paths here that you could go on. As it turns out, the path that lowers entropy is a path where these entities cooperate, care about each other, and focus on how they can be of service rather than what can they get. So let's imagine two sets of, an experiment where we have two sets, and we're going to see the difference between these two sets. One is, let's say we have 100,000 individuated units of consciousness, and that'll be set one. And in this set, there will be a certain amount of resources, a certain amount of capability, a certain amount of space, and then we'll have another set that's a duplicate of that. The same amount of ability, capability, space, resources, everything's exactly the same in the second set, except we're going to have two different attitudes in each one of these sets. Okay? In the first attitude, we are going to have a cooperative, caring attitude. Okay? In this set, if somebody invents something or comes up with a really good idea, they share it with everybody else. If somebody is unhappy about what's going on, well, everybody tries to get together to make them happy, to rearrange things such that they can contribute better or be happier in what they're doing. So it's about other, primarily. And let this set go. Just let it evolve however it evolves, and we'll come back and look at it, say, 100 years later, and see just what we have evolved there. We're going to take another set, the other set, and it's going to be, instead of love-based, like the first set, it's going to be fear-based. When you have fear, then you don't have trust. You're afraid that everybody else is going to take advantage of you. So you trust no one. And it's all about getting your needs met because you're self-centered. Fear is very self-centered. If you're fearful, it's about you. You see, that's the nature of fear, is that it's yours. You're fearful, it makes that just about you. So the fearful set won't have trust. They will each try to get as much of those resources as they can. Then they will have to hold on to them the best they can because somebody else might take it away from them. Well, they quickly learn that if they group up, they become a little more powerful. So 10 of those fearful beings together as a pack, as a group, now they're more powerful. They can go away and take stuff away from all the singles or all the doubles or triples because there are 10 of them, and they can overpower and take what they want. Well, pretty soon there's a group that's got 20. Well, then the other group has to get bigger. And what happens in the end in this group is that competing groups form. And in these competing groups, each one's trying to get as much of the stuff as possible, as much of the resources as they can manage and try to keep them. Well, because nobody really trusts each other. The leadership of this group is constantly changing, constantly being done in, and somebody else is rising to the top, and it's constant turmoil there, and it's a very inefficient process. You eventually, at the end of your 100 years that you have to see what works, you would have probably 5% of the beings in the fear-based group in control of 95% of all the resources, and everybody else is kind of a peasant or a lackey. And you'd have these power groups that would grow, and the leaders would ostensibly protect their followers from the preying on by other groups. And you would have very little trust. Everybody would be out for themselves. It'd be kind of a dog-eat-dog world there. Well, that sounds a whole lot like our world, doesn't it? That's the one we live in every day, right here in good old physical reality. It's a fear-based world. So we know how that turns out. Over on the other side, where people cooperate, there is no need for a grouping up for protection. There is no need for grabbing as much stuff as you can. There is no need even for a whole lot of government or ordering or hierarchy at all. You see, there's no need for management. You see, management would never say, you go grab this crank and turn it, that's your job, that's your contribution, because that would not be in the best interest of that person. That person may not want to turn that knob. And everybody in that reality wants that person to fulfill themselves to the greatest potential that they have, not to do things they don't want. So in the world that is love-based, you would have lots and lots of personal freedom to do what you want, how you want, when you want. Because if you didn't and you were unhappy, the rest of the players in that world would try to fix it for you. And as you see one of them unhappy, you try to fix it for them. So you have to imagine a world without fear. You see, we can't do that very easily because we live in a very fearful place. So we say, well, there's certain jobs have to be done and nobody wants to do them, so somebody would have to be forced to do them. No, that's a fearful viewpoint. That's a fearful viewpoint. It's not like that. There are jobs that need to be done, and if everybody sees they need to be done, then there would be people who would do them. And if they're jobs that are unpleasant, well, then they would be particularly high-paying jobs, because when you do things that are unpleasant, you ought to get more rewards for that. You see, there's ways to make hard jobs or not nice jobs sweeter by the way you compensate for them, by the respect you have for doing those jobs. So if taking out the trash is not a nice job, well, taking out the trash becomes high status, because the people who take it out, well, everybody says thank you. And they're kind of the big shots in the community because they take out the trash, they get the work done. So it'd just be a different kind of structure than you have now, and everything would be done in a way that it would work for everybody. So at the end of their 100 years, they would have optimized the value for every individual to the greatest extent possible. And you would have a place that would be a very wonderful place to live and work and raise your family and be a part of. The other one, well, we know what the other one's like. We live there in the fear-based thing. We know how that turns out. It turns out full of greed and nastiness and everybody trying to control everybody else. That's how that one works out. So you see, the one that is ordered, the one that is caring, the one that is love-based, that is the low entropy solution to a social system. So that's what entropy has to do with love. We are, as consciousness, pieces of a social system. And the way we lower our entropy is by becoming love, caring about other, being compassionate, having empathy. That's how you optimize a social system. That's how you optimize consciousness. That's how you create information. You create choice. You create freedom. You create opportunity. All of that is very constructive. On the other side, well, that's, like I say, that's just like us. Everything is suboptimal. Most everybody in that world is working beneath their potential. They could do more. They could be more, but they can't because they're stuck in a structure, in a hierarchy, in a position. They're a peasant, or they're, well, most of them are peasants. So that is how entropy and love get connected. Thank you.